Right, so just before we get into another game, just a little foreword, if you will, right? So casual, friendly, fun event, so do forgive any play errors or, little fun back and forths. And then also on the editing side, right? It's not as legible as I would necessarily like it, but hopefully the editing magic has done its trick and you can still follow along with the side panels, right? But other than that, hope you enjoy. So, next game up is me on Marlynn versus Nick on Betsy, and for once I'm not sporting the goofy deck, instead Nick is. So Nick's cooked up a Sledge of Anvilheim, right, deck. So it's basically a whole bunch of setup into a whole bunch of swings, but it is my turn to start, so I'm basically also just going for setup in this sense. So I am death dealing to load up a go again arrow and a blue arrow face down, right? So we can sea lace it, send 2 arrows, and then go into, well, a powerful turn. Generally speaking, for fatigue, right, as Marlynn, my game plan is just always a setup turn where I can block out, retain 1 or 2 arrows to arsenal, and then go into a heftier turn like this. So yeah, we sea lace wrong to be able to send a Falcon Wing into a sleep dart, and then still just our 4 cards in hand. Well, 1 to pitch, but then we can death deal, load up another arrow, or stick something else in the in-between. So generally speaking, Betsy, the majority of the time, is just gonna try and block out, so it's really just about getting over the top of that. So here we're gonna send a CNC, right? Just a little bit of disruption, and I gotta say it's not that horrible of a turn, a 2 or 3 and then a 6, right? So yeah, somewhat decent. So a pummel to punish, and I guess the question is that kind of worth the infecting shot just gunking up my arsenal, right? Again, it leads into that smaller turn where I can take some time to block out and set up, because my next turn is basically just the infecting shot, clear my arsenal, and then have something in the arsenal. But on the Betsy side of things, it's Call to the Grave, which I actually do like this little combo. So Call to the Grave for Fiddler's Green. So basically, Sigil of Solace that gets you 2 cards minused from your deck is kind of cool. But other than that, Betsy is just basically looking for a whole bunch of items to set up. On my turn, again, it's just that infecting shot to clear my arsenal. I didn't have to block, so I do have a nice juicy hand, and I can pick from my cards what I want. So it will be the go again arrow, meaning most likely I'm not trenching in unless I do draw exceedingly well. But again, Betsy side of things, they set up an Amethyst Amulet, which is one of the new ones, just for a +2, so instant strength pot, right? But we are shooting the Falcon Wing as a red go again, so we're going to try and set up, somewhat big of a turn. We don't have that blue arrow to go along with it, right? I definitely like aiming for 2 arrows, but we can Death Dealer, right, which allows us to float resources, set up some blues for high tides, because I am taking a big boat Marlynn, so we get to load up a Sick'em Shot, a Withering Shot, so that's another go again arrow, so a red 4, beautiful, and then the Withering Shot to boot, or most likely, I believe, I'm sending a boat, even though I don't have the high tide proc, so it is just a 6, but the Krakens are actually really nice in this matchup, because they threaten item destruction, although I don't think I've chosen too carefully with the item destruction. I've taken the gold because in my head that's sift as well as float some resources, when really it's probably the Crazy Brew. The Crazy Brew is definitely the biggest impact, I think, on the Betsy side of things, but I do know, because they told me, they only run 3 attacks, and they are 3 copies of Big Bet, right? Because they get them Gold, Mind, Vigor, and the gold is the big one. But here, they don't have the resources to Betsy it, right? So no overpower, no +1, meaning we can block it out, and we get the resources, which is definitely really nice, because again, we're back onto a slow turn where it should just be the Withering Shot, but I do have a Murderous Rebel to go with it. It reveals another Withering Shot, so the Murderous Rebel's coming in for 4, with the +1 for the Might, right? And then we can just send the Withering Shot, but we don't really have anything left, so generally speaking, I think in hindsight, it might have been a little bit better to Arsenal the Murderous Rebel, right? And that way, at least I have that 5th card going into the next turn, because it is definitely, a war of attrition where I have to get that little bit damage over the top, so that once I start, presenting the mid-range to end of the game, we're really yoinking all the cards from the Betsy, right? If they're able to just, again, retain a card like that, like Crazy Brew, and set something up, then, we're sort of losing the race, because it will be quite the big turn once they actually get the sledge off, right? But going back to me, we're starting off by cracking the gold, and maybe I should have death dealed first here, right? I had the go again arrow, the Sick'em Shot, so it would have been fine, and I sort of kind of waste the load off of the gold, so I could have gold, Sick'em Shot, and then still had another arrow to load, right? And I think that would have been a little bit better, but nonetheless, right, we're going Sick'em Shot into, well, you can probably see, another pummel. So yeah, I do really like the pummels in Marlynn, because again, you've got access to all those boats. You could even take the blue harpoons. I do generally like. I don't have them currently, but they do work out nicely with the sea lace sarong, right? You can just load them up, but it's a pummeled CNC, so not too shabby, right? We are definitely whittling down the Betsy, which is, again, what we really want. We have to get them to a point where they have to give all the cards from their hand, so they can't have that real powerful turn. But on this side of things, they're setting up a Sapphire Amulet, which is the +1 Intellect Amulet, and then back to us. So, Death Dealer to load Searing Shot, and then we draw into a Codex. Now, Codex is also an interesting play, because again, it can fetch me those boats, it can fetch me the CNC, so it is definitely really nice to have, right, in this deck, where there's actually some decent choices for us, because it's not just the aggro version that I was playing, say, the week before. I think I've done some videos on the channel about, right? It is actually big boats. So, again, just taking the time to set up, then that leads Betsy to be able to set up as well, Time Snap Potion, but again, a lot of their cards are also defensive, so we are slowing them down in that sense as well. We've gotten Prismatic Leyline into a 3 of a kind turn, so I do have a card in the arsenal, which is another 3 of a kind. I don't know if this is generally the best way to play it. I feel like I should have spread them out maybe, right? Use the arsenal one, being able to load up off of it, because now I kind of just have a whole bunch of cards I can't do too much with, right? It really pays when you have the Hammerhead Harpoon Cannon, and you just feed all the extra resources into that +4. We're starting off with a red Sigum Shot, so it's getting the +1 from the Prismatic Leyline, right? So it is going to come over the top of that Shelter from the Storm, and then we can send a Widowmaker as an 8, right? But if it's blocked out by 2 cards, it does lose 3, so nice and easy on the Betsy side of things. They have Gambler's Glove, they still have Tectonic. I mean, even Tectonic, once it has no armor, they still have it, right? So nice and easy for them to shut down, but it is still going to land that chip damage, right? Which is definitely nice. Again, really just trying to get them as low as possible, so they have to start really blocking. Or, you know, if they still had a whole bunch of items in their hand, then we're just going to punish them greatly. But on their side of things, it's another Crazy Brew to set up, so they're almost complete. They've got 3 Crazy Brews, a Time Snap, a +1 Intellect, and +2, so they can definitely send some swings, but I'm trenching to be able to Conqueror here, right? Which is a bit sad because I don't have the blues, so yeah, it is just a pummeled Conqueror, which is still really nice. No cards in Arsenal, so it's basically just the damage they do. Block it out immensely with Unmovable and Fate Foreseen, but well, hopefully, you know, again, slowing them down. So, onto the Betsy side of things, right? So, I believe it was another big bet in their hand, so the question is whether or not they can land it, or they're just feeding me more resources. So, instead, they're going to pitch it away, and they're just going to come in with a sledge. So, 6. At this point, I feel like I can just let the sledges through, right? 6 damage is not too bad in the long run. I do have to definitely watch out. I do know the combo. It was explained to me previously. So it's like 2 to 3 swings of sledge into 10-foot tall. So it is a lot of damage, but I think 34 is fine, right? So pitching into Death Dealer, right? So we've got 2 floating, a bolt and shot, and well, we have another 3 of a kind and a Codex. So Codex is nice here. Again, I have the option, if I wanted, to grab a blue arrow, flip it, have a go again, but in this case, I'm going to take Conquerors because, well, it's just the better damage overall, and I do have 3 of a kind, which should net me that extra blue to be able to send it properly, right? So, yeah, it's quite the blue-heavy deck. Now, I will say this is probably where my greed starts to show, because I like aiming pretty high, so a nice easy out here probably would have been just to send the pummel with the Conquerors up the high season end with the bolt and shot, right? And that still would have been a little bit of chip damage, but they are fully blocking out here, right? So they've got the quick dodges and 2 cards. But again, I like the greed, and you know, all it takes is the right arrow with quiver to make this work. But we hit another bolt. So yeah, no good. I now have 2 non-go again arrows, right, that I have to clear from my arsenal. So yeah, we're definitely going to send 1, right? So it's a yellow bolt and shot for 3. They have the quick dodges, so they're just going to take the 1, right? But then we can still Arsenal, but, you know, it's a little bit awkward. I can trench it away and get the resource, but that doesn't really do much with a bolt and shot. I'd really much rather just something better in my Arsenal, right? So, yeah, Betsy's just going to pass back to us. They cleared their hand, right, blocking out, and we're still just trying to chip away to prepare for that final onslaught. So, for our side of things, it's whether or not, again, I spend the time clearing the arsenal, or we just try and push, and we are going to try and push. So we pitch into a Kraken, but unfortunately no high tide. It's a blue and a yellow, right? So we didn't quite hit the mark, but it's still a 6. It's still threatening the item destruction, and again, I think I pick poorly. So we do land the pummel as well, right? 8 goes over the top of their defense reactions, and double that all you got as well, interestingly, right? So what item to destroy? Now again, should probably most likely be the Crazy Brews, but we take the guaranteed time snap, I guess. Again, in my head, I'm greeting and going, they're gonna roll poorly, surely. 3 rolls, right? They can't do too well. But we still have that awkward Bolton shot in our arsenal, right? Which is definitely just messing things up. Although, you know, Codex isn't too bad, right? As long as we have New Horizons. Plus, I could always pop the New Horizon to get rid of the Bolton shot at some point. But we're just going to send the blue. We're going to take that delay, which, you know, might be a little bit rough because this could definitely be the opening for the Betsy to swing, right? Their board is definitely nice and juicy, but I think they do kind of want a full hand going into it, right? But we take the arsenal and pass back to them. So on the Betsy side of things, it's going to be a big bet with one card left in hand, meaning that they can pitch into Betsy, give it overpower, give it the +1, and basically just get away with the tokens, right? A gold, a vigor, and a might, which is definitely really rough because that's definitely the perfect kickstart into that devastating sledge turn. So I can't block out. I have to take it, which is, double-edged sword, because unless I can present decently well here, it's most likely the sledge on the following turn. So on our side of things, we're going to Sea Lace to flip a hamstring, which can definitely, help with that sledge since it's that one extra resource cost. But it's whether or not they decide, is this going to be, enough of a penalty to block out, or do we take it? And they are blocking out, so blocked out by a never yield, right? Equal footing. We're going to Death Dealer, load up another hamstring shot. We hit a Prismatic Leyline, which at least makes it a little bit bigger. Now, I probably should have Codexed here, right? Grab something that I could use. I'm sure there would have been, that Bolton shot. There was plenty of Bolton shots I could hit with the Prismatic as a go again, but it's an unmovable from hand, not arsenal, so it doesn't get the plus, meaning we do land the hamstring shot, but at this point they are just acting defensively, so it's not too big of a deal. We pass back to them, and they tuck a sigil into their arsenal, right, and then pass it back to us. So on our side of things, again, it's just we have to keep up the tempo and get that hand removed. But it's a sleep dart, which is not a big penalty because Betsy's not involved in their anvil combo at all, right? Fiddler's green, so a little bit of recovery once the combat chain closes, which it does, thanks to Death Dealer. And then from there, we're going to load up the Swift Shot, right? Because it's the most damage we can present, plus it's a nice go again arrow. We also hit a Falcon Wing, right? So it would have been a nice time to have that quiver for that third arrow. But yeah, Swift Shot for a 4, blocked out by On the Horizon. So no damage there. Coming in next with the Falcon Wing red, so for 3. Should be nice and easy again for them to just block it out with a Truce, right? So again, no damage quite yet, but a Command and Conquer. And well, now in post I know it's a Sigil. Plus, at the moment I knew it was a Sigil, right? So they play the Sigil, gain the life, and Command and Conquer whiffs, but again, it's still some chip damage, right, against the life they've already regained. So they're just going to pass back to us, right? They're sifting for a couple more items, I think, right? I think they need another Time Snap Potion. I'm trying to think in my head how many action points they need. 3 sledges and 2 10-foot talls would be 4 action points, right? Plus the one they already get, so 3. So if they do luck out on all the crazy brews, they're fine. But we send in a Barracuda. Barracuda does nothing in this matchup, but I take it mainly as, the better ship, right, against Gravy versus the, was it destroy the top card of their deck? Yeah, that doesn't seem too great. So they Sigil and pass, right, well, they Sigil on my turn and then pass, right? So, yeah. Now for our turn. Hand is looking nice, right? We have a kind of useless pummel, though. So, Murderous Rebel hits a Sunken, right? So that's not too good to see. It means the Death Deal is not going to really amount to much, but they block it out with a On the Horizon, right? So, again, another most likely defensive turn. So it's how many of my resources, essentially, do I want to use up, right? Come in with a Widowmaker for 5. I probably should have trenched the card just so I could have that go again arrow and the extra arsenal slot from New Horizon, but seeing the Sunken Treasure, my thought was, well, I'm not really going to get much out of the Death Dealer. So on their side of things, they play a Time Snap Potion, right? So that's at least 1 guaranteed action point, and then they have the 3 Crazy Brews. On our side of things, 2 blues into a Conqueror of the High Seas, so that's definitely nice, right? Maybe it was worth keeping, maybe going wider. Again, still would have been a little bit better, because this is only yoinking a couple cards from the hand so far, right? So not quite getting anything through. After that, Falcon Wing drawing another ship, which is definitely nice, right? It's definitely the card I arsenal at the end of this turn. Keep the pummel and then try to deliver that disruption, right, on the following turn, because all it takes is that click where I see them not blocking, and then I have to kind of be a little bit scared, because then if I can't deal with them, the sledge is coming, and yeah, it's what, an 8 into a 6 into 2 10s plus maybe another 6. That is a crazy amount, right? But on our side of things, it's how will I get that pummel to land? And now, I might also just say, right, the reason I always arsenal the pummel and not the attack is in case I do want to trench it, right? There is, the chance that that's a little bit more value. But we do get the Kraken off of 2 blues, meaning we do have the resources floating, which means it's also kind of pretty obvious that it's going to be a pummel. But still, it's a good amount of damage, and I can see their hand now, so it's not that fantastic, right? So they have to discard a Potion of Strength, but they do have an Energy Pot, which is also something they do need. But landing the Kraken again allows us to destroy an item, and it should probably be the resource and action point generation and damage generation, right? But alas, the more we know for next time, right? Now, they come in with a knick-knack bric-a-brac, which should be able to fetch the remaining items that they really want, right? So they get an action point, diamond amulets, they get resources off the ruby amulet, and an energy pot. So they hit 3, right? Knick-knack bric-a-brac draws 1 for itself, and then they had 2 gold to utilize with it. So, on the outside of things, I really just have to keep the pressure on and shut them down. If I can't pressure them here, then we're a little bit in the rough water, right? But we see Lace to be able to send a Withering Shot to start, so they block with a Truce. Now, again, how do we keep that pressure on? Withering Shot is definitely really nice here, because if we can get that minus to Sled, that definitely will help. Now, I have used my my braces here, but I've just tapped them, right? Weirdly. Granted, though, I never reuse them, right? I do consider them gone, I just consider them tapped. So, yeah, Bolt and Shot just does a nice 3-go again. It's just damage, meaning it's not really pressuring anything. And then into just a Blue Battalion, which is, again, just some damage, right? So they go to 3, and they do have everything they need to now pop off. So, it's whether or not they get us, right? So, Crazy Brew starts, and they roll a 4. So, the thought here is, do they take the life, right, and salvage themselves, or do they gamblers it and chance it, right? If they rolled a 2 and go down to 1, then the next Crazy Brew could obviously do them in, right? So, Crazy Brew, second, right? They took the life. Second one, they are going to gamblers because they rolled a 2. And from there, they roll a 6. And that is obviously the worst outcome for us, because we can deal with some life gain. We can't quite deal with the resources and the action points. So they get 2 action points, 2 energy, and a +2 to the next attack. And then on the third Crazy Brew, they roll a natural 6. So, yeah, this is gonna hurt. So the first sledge comes in for 10, and I block with all my equipment. Realistically, I should have probably just let this through, right, and just started blocking when it was really threatening. But yeah, we lose New Horizons, right? So do keep mental note of that, because I did it, as you'll see in a little bit. But in comes the second sledge for an 8, right? So yeah, we do definitely have to be a little bit worried, but we do have the perfect 8 thanks to a codex, right? So we will fully block that out, retain 1 card in hand. So basically we're at 23, if you will, right? Because we have 1 card left in hand to block with, and it's what they have left. So I don't think they can quite get another sledge off, but they will ruby and diamond for the action points, right? And that way they can use the sapphire, which gives them that 1 intellect. Now, here comes the 10-foot tall. So it's 10-foot tall and 10-foot tall, meaning they get 17 across, and we go down to 3 as well. But they get 1 card, right? Because they went to 5 intellect, and then they lost 4. So they do get to Arsenal, which is definitely nice, right? So we draw up, pass back to them, they get to Arsenal, and then pass back to us. So now the race is on, right? We're at the tail end. I think they have 1 big bet left, which they can definitely use to win, right? Especially if they get the Betsy proc on it. Now, you might notice 2 cards in my arsenal, but no New Horizon. Weirdly, though, it's like I just completely forget the Falcon Wing is there once I put it down. So we go Murderous Rabble, we do hit a blue into Searing Shot rather than Falcon Wing Searing Shot, which is probably, the correct play. So for whatever reason, my brain is treating it like it doesn't exist, but obviously I've made the mistake. I've Arsenal 2 cards, and then I still Arsenal 2 cards. So yeah, oopsie daisy, right? I would have had the Falcon Wing and then the pummel, right, that I have Arsenaled. One of them would be in my hand, and I guess I wouldn't have drawn the codex. But I do realize at some point, right? I think shortly, yeah, there we go, that I Arsenal 1 too many cards, so I just destroy the pummel. Which I think the pummel also could have been my win case, right? As that little bit of extra damage that they don't account for because they tried to just block out me going wide. But here comes the Falcon Wing, right? So just a 2, which they will end up taking because, well, they need to be able to swing back, and, that doesn't put them in jeopardy just yet. But we Death Dealer, pitching a codex, loading a Swift Shot, so that's a 4, which is definitely nice here, because it requires that double block, right? Because they have gone down to 3. So that is definitely nice if I could capitalize on it, but we have 1 resource and we didn't draw another arrow, right? 1 blue arrow would have been really, really good there. Would have emptied their hand, and then maybe I could have done something with the next turn. Although looking at it now, they had an energy pot and riches, so that was definitely not helpful. But they pitch into Sledge, right? So yeah, in comes a 6, we have to give 2 cards, otherwise, we're dead, right? Which is also really rough too. If I was 4 HP, we just do like them, give that 1 extra card. Now, the 2 also doesn't matter, because I don't think there's any natural 5s in my deck either, right? So even if I get, say, another 4, they only have to give 1 card. So we are probably in the worst position, but we're going to try. So yeah, in comes Kraken, and we do get the Overpower, right? So 7 Overpower, but a Sigil in the Arsenal. So I do see that now, so they could have prolonged the match. But overall, I think I would have won the fatigue race, right? Again, they didn't have any attacks left. They ran out of the big bets, so they were just going to be able to send 6 every time. So I give 2 cards, and eventually I'd be able to, you know, set up a card in the arsenal with go again, and then have 2 cards to be able to work something that would, you know, hopefully get the damage across, be it, you know, another overpower attack. I still had a fair amount of boats, I think, right? But overall, a crazy stall deck and what, you know, I really love to see. So yeah, big sledges into 10 foot tall. So not quite the 40, I believe, right? It was a 10, 6, 210, so 36 overall, but still, that is a crazy turn. But I did disrupt their items, right? So it could have been even bigger, right? If they just, you know, landed one more sledge, that'd be 42, right? So yeah, it's definitely some insane potential. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.